Welcome. Thank you for attending this media briefing this morning concerning the ongoing flooding. Obviously, we're here at Davenport Public Works. We're going to hear a lot of great information about the efforts from the City of Davenport. My name is David Donovan. I'm the Director of the Scott County Emergency Management Agency. Some of my comments will extend beyond the city limits of Davenport into other communities in our county as well as the unincorporated areas. So I want to start by saying that my agency certainly supports our partners with the City of Davenport. They're awesome at flood response. I've been with Scott County for over 30 years. They do an awesome job every year protecting that valued resource in our riverfront and responding when the river doesn't tend to cooperate with us. And I know that they're doing everything possible to minimize the impact for our community. So the flooding of 2019, as you all are aware, continues to be very challenging. Very wet soil conditions from last fall, along with high amounts of snow during the winter months and spring rains, have created a very bad situation for us. We may match our previous record set in 1993 for the highest crest on record, and even if we don't get to that record, you can see the hydrograph on the screen alongside me, even if we don't get to that record for the level of the crest, we've already set a record for the longest flooded period on record. That continues to present challenges of its own for us. Please do check the National Weather Service. We encourage everyone in the community to stay aware, have situational awareness, but please check the National Weather Service for the latest projections. For our office, the protection of life and public health is always our top priority. And I will say this to our community, and this applies to the City of Davenport residents as well as everyone in Scott County. Anyone impacted by flooding that feels unsafe or in any way in jeopardy, we encourage you to contact the appropriate authorities. If it's immediate, please dial 911. Do not put your life or the life of anyone else at risk. You can contact our office, Scott County Emergency Management, or the Scott County Health Department as well for public health issues. Your city can be a resource as well, and they'll speak to that depending on where you reside. I know that many people are in their homes that have been impacted by the floodwaters. Again, if you find yourself with challenges to your safety or to your ability to have clean drinking water, food, or personal hygiene, call our office at 563-484-3050 or contact our partners at the Salvation Army or the American Red Cross. We stand at the ready to help. We do have a supply of clean drinking water available. We stand again ready to open shelters for persons impacted by the flooding. There's a schedule for that water distribution in several locations throughout the county. It's available on our website at scottcountyema.com, as well as other flood-related public health information that you can find there. Please check that information, especially if you have any questions or concerns, or if you have a well or a septic system. For Scott County residents, we still also do have sandbags available for last-minute sandbagging efforts or flood protection efforts. They're available at our Scott County Secondary Roads Department on Blackhawk Trail in Eldridge, Iowa, during normal business hours. If residents need assistance from the impacts of flooding, the Iowa Individual Assistance Program has been turned on and is available in our county, as well as case management services. Those services are provided by Community Action of Eastern Iowa. Their offices can be reached at 563-324-3236. We encourage you to reach out to them if you have any concerns, any challenges, especially concerning ongoing flooding. I do want to provide some thank yous before I turn it over to Nicole Gleason from the City of Davenport. From our office, obviously we want to thank our partners with the City of Davenport. We want to extend our sincere gratitude to our partners at the American Red Cross and Salvation Army, as well as the Scott County Community Emergency Response Team and other volunteers for all their hard work through this difficult time. We also want to thank our partners with Iowa Homeland Security and Emergency Management Department, who have helped us procure additional resources, Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA Region 7, who will assist us in preparing to recover by helping us explore if there's possible additional assistance that we can bring to our community. We want to thank Governor Reynolds and her office, our federal congressional delegation, particularly Senators Grassley and Ernst, who have worked to stay informed and continue to advocate on our behalf. Thank you, everyone. And lastly, we want to thank our county and municipal partners for answering the call, working together so well. While this situation is very problematic and troublesome and certainly inconvenient, we want everyone to be safe. We will learn from this, as we have from prior events, and we will emerge stronger than ever. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nicole for her comments.
Does anybody have any questions first?
Have you had any people call from, around the county for help, like you mentioned, for assistance or sandbags? Are there any problem areas that are more hard hit than others?
For us outside in the county areas, we've helped provide sandbags in the cities of Princeton and Buffalo. We've also worked with the cities of Riverdale and LeClaire on efforts. We've provided assistance in Pleasant Valley area as well. We've had numerous residents that have reached out to us. If folks live in a city, we encourage them to contact their city first, especially for sandbags and those kinds of items, but they can reach out to our office directly as well. We fielded quite a few calls, especially with the prolonged crest.
Where are those, you mentioned the shelters that could possibly open. Where are those shelters? What's the threshold for them opening?
Well, if we have people in need of shelter, we would work with our partners to open those shelters. They've got locations designated all throughout the county in various locations that they can open those shelters. There's nothing open at this point. We've offered a few residents to put them up in shelters and they've declined. I know that we do have residents who are staying in hotels right now because their homes are inaccessible or unsafe for them to stay there, but they've chosen that. We also know of a couple situations where insurance companies have stepped forward and put residents up through their own private property insurance.
You mentioned some individual protection system in place. Was that the name of it? What was that?
It's the Iowa Individual Assistance Program.
Okay.
That is a grant program through the state of Iowa. They have a disaster assistance fund, and they do make small grants available. There are income guidelines for that as well. You have to meet those income guidelines. Case management services, however, are available to everyone regardless of income, and those case management services can help put people in contact with needed services or find other avenues that they may not qualify for the grant, but they may qualify for other programs as well. We also have contact with the Iowa Disaster Human Resources Council, which is the state's voluntary organizations active in disasters, or VOAD. We also have the Quad City COAD, which is a local, those are all consortiums of not-for-profits that can help people as well. So if we have unmet needs or people don't qualify for particular programs, we do have other resources in the community as well as at the state level. And then ultimately we'll work with FEMA to find out whether or not there is enough of an impact here where we would qualify for federal assistance.
Is that during and after the flood then?
Correct.
Or
Yes, we've been working with FEMA to try. Currently there's a presidential declaration for the western part of the state, the catastrophic flooding that took place along the Missouri River a month ago. That declaration remains open, and so we've been advocating through FEMA as well as through our congressional delegation to leave that application period open for us for our impacts. Right now, we don't know, and you'll hear that again from Ms. Gleason, we don't understand the impacts of this flooding. Many areas are still underwater, and until those floodwaters recede, it's impossible for us to begin to estimate what those impacts might be.
Since things have changed so much since '93, do you anticipate that when the water's down that there will be less damage?
There could be. I think what we find is that every flood is unique. Different flow patterns, different speeds and rates with which the water comes up and goes down. That all impacts. A new structure can divert water into an area that we didn't realize that it would create some sort of an eddy or a different kind of a current that could affect something that we're not going to know about until the water goes back down. So it's always possible. We sort of expect it, that everyone's going to be a little bit different. For example, the flooding along the Wapsipinicon River earlier this spring, the current seemed higher than normal, and it seemed to bring a lot more debris into those areas up there as well.
mentioned that once the flooding has receded, we kind of learned something from our flood. What are some of the takeaways so far that we have from this flood in particular?
Well, for me, this is, this has been the biggest disaster that I've been a part of in this current role. So we're continuing to learn processes. So we're learning processes for accessing services and the like. But we learn things about partnerships. Some of it's relationship building with these municipalities. We've learned about flood protection this year. We've learned about where, again, there are additional assets that could be available should we choose to avail ourselves of them, and different options for flood protection. There's a lot of, you talked about since 1993, there's a lot of new flood technologies out there. And I know that there are private residences along the Mississippi River, especially in the LeClaire and Princeton area, that have explored some of those new technologies, some of those new systems. Obviously, the city of Davenport uses those HESCO barriers very effectively. That's something that's even new, relatively new. They've been around now for 10 or 15 years maybe, but that's a new technology, and there are additional systems that continue to be available that look different, bladder types of systems and things like that that folks can use to help keep the water at bay.
Do any of those private homes have those bladder systems that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. I think a couple of residents explored them, and I think for them it was a timing issue when the water was going to come up, when they could get it in. But I think there are several of them that are exploring it for future events, as well as HESCO barriers. I know I put several people in contact with a representative to get some HESCO barriers for private individuals and businesses.
Thanks.
One last question. I know, obviously, you're the Scott County, but have you had any contact with people across the river in Moline, East Moline, and Rock Island to see what their strategies have been and kind of information sharing?
Yeah, so again, a lesson learned. One thing that we did this year, and I've got to give Brian Payne from my office credit, this was his initiative, is we initiated weekly flood update conference calls. And we got the National Weather Service on those conference calls, and those were for emergency managers and city staff from all throughout the area. It was a bi-state effort. Anything that we do in terms of disaster preparedness, planning, it's always done in a bi-state nature. We are one Quad Cities. That's not just a catchphrase. It's the reality. We live on both sides of the river. We travel back and forth, and we have to plan together. And so we've been doing those weekly calls to help coordinate efforts amongst the two communities. We've talked about potential use of resources, where we might deploy things if we needed to call on volunteers to assist, where we might do some of those things, and what the efforts are looking like in the Illinois Quad Cities. Their efforts look different than our efforts, obviously. Some of those communities have flood walls in place, some of them don't, so their efforts are all a little bit different and unique to their particular situation. But by being on that conference call on a weekly basis, we can get that information from each other, share, know what each other's doing, and have that situational awareness for the entire Quad City area. Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nicole Gleason, City of Davenport Public Works Director. So that was a great update from Dave, and again, we do appreciate their partnership as well. The city has been accepting some support from Living Lands and Water and the City of Davenport, City of Bettendorf as well over the past couple days, so we do appreciate their outreach. So at this point, we are reinforcing our HESCO barriers that are on River Drive by adding sandbags to the top and reinforcing the backs of them. In addition, we are monitoring the East Village and other areas that could potentially be affected once we do get above that 22-foot level. So right now it is just, we have all hands on deck, sandbagging, HESCOing where needed, and monitoring pumps and things of that nature. We do have many of our facilities closed, so our Parks and Rec Director can talk about some of their impacts there. A lot of that will not be able to be reopened until we're back below that 19.5 or so foot level, so we're just monitoring that closely. Obviously, some cleanup will need to be done before we can open facilities as well. We do have an updated detour map on our website, so we can pull that up for you all to show. There are some additional road closures that do happen with the 21 that we saw yesterday. So there's a little bit of change in detour, and people are really just gonna have to use their best judgment as they see road closures pop up, not driving through that water, trying to find alternative routes. I know it's difficult to get through the downtown right now. In addition, we've been receiving a lot of phone calls about if we get these really heavy rainfalls like last Monday all at once, about localized road flooding. So we are getting to that as soon as possible to clean catch basins and things, but if you see a catch basin that's troublesome and you can safely remove the leaves, that will help relieve some of that road water quickly as well. So I can take any questions that are specific to Davenport Public Works at this point.
So compared to the last crest, just kind of what are some of the main focuses this time?
So that 20.68 that we saw before, there are just some differences at 21 as far as road closures, what our pumps can keep up with, and on reinforcing that HESCO wall. So 21 was a little bit of a milestone. Again, the 22, if we do get to 22, we'll see some more impacts in the village of East Davenport, and we are monitoring that closely.
What type of level can the HESCO barriers kind of sustain?
At this point, with the amount of sandbags we have added to the top, we feel it'll be around 23.
Is there any worry about the durability of the HESCO barriers at all? Have they lasted this long before, or?
We have never had them up for this length of time, but we are actually adding sand in behind them to reinforce as well. So we're beefing it up in addition to adding to the top. Yep.
What kind of shifts are you guys working?
We do have people on 24/7 right now from every single department at Public Works. We have, everyone's helping out fill sandbags and create HESCO walls. So we do have shifts. The sewers and streets department primarily are on rotating 12-hour shifts right now. And in addition, our water treatment plant, we have a skeleton crew there. It does take some effort to get people in and out at this point because it's surrounded by water. So we have the staff that's not on site at our water pollution control plant is assisting here as well.
Speaking of the pollution control, is sewage going into the river now?
And yes, there are definitely going to be surcharge manholes, and those will be unpredictable. We encourage people not to drive through, walk through floodwater. That's going to be true up and down the river whenever you have this volume of water inundating your storm sewer system. There's going to be ways for water to find itself where it wants to go. Yeah.
I'm just specifically talking about the plant, the sewage plant.
So it's, at this point, we're blending more than we usually do, so it can only have so much capacity of water that goes through it. And when we get to this river level over the past couple of days, they are doing more blending. So we're not treating as much as we normally would be just because there's such a large infiltration of river water. Yep.
So about
Honestly, I don't know.
half, or?
I don't honestly have a number exactly on that. We can look into it for you.
But then it's whatever's diluted, it goes back in the river without being treated, right?
Correct. Yep, and that would be true up and down the river for any
Yes.
towns flooded right now.
Yeah.
You mentioned it, or it's mentioned up here, the approximate cost through last week were $440,000 for overtime materials equipment. Is that within budgetary expectations? Have you guys exceeded the budget?
So generally, on a typical flood, we'd spend around $250,000, so that's kind of where we keep our emergency funds for flooding. So we have exceeded the budget. We are working with finance, and obviously, the city always keeps a buffer of money for things just such as this, so we're well within, what we can spend at this point.
Considering how you said that people are working 24-hour shifts, what's morale like for employees?
In the last 4 months, honestly, between the snow, and now this, the employees, I'm sure, are exhausted. We have been, trying to feed them extra lunches and do things that we can do, and we just appreciate their diligence and hanging in there, and just hoping that the flood will end soon and we can give everybody a couple weeks off.
What can residents do to help just make things easier for not only, public works employees, but just people in general?
Honestly, if residents can heed the signs, don't drive through floodwater, don't walk through floodwater, we would appreciate at this point. We put up some barriers in front of the HESCO flood wall. If people could stay behind that barrier to allow our employees to do their job without being interfered or having to be concerned about citizens being around the area. And again, if they see something on their street, a plugged drain cover, that they can safely help remove the debris, any little things like that are going to be the most helpful for us right now.
When it comes to that cost, when it comes to that cost, just kind of when did that start? Like when does that just this month or does that start back in March?
So that started back in March when we initially set up that flood wall. That's kind of when we started the time clock on cost tracking.
And of course, there was flooding last year in the spring, in the fall, and did you have any money left over from last year?
Really, it's just all how we budget,
Right.
which is, you know, what money we don't spend on flood can go to
Gets
other
spent
things.
somewhere else.
Yep, exactly.
What's communication been like with Canadian Pacific, right? Yeah, because I know I believe they shut down one of their trains. I know in Bettendorf, there's a big concrete barrier essentially across State Street, including the train track.
Right, so what happened with Canadian Pacific at this point, Iowa American Water had to shut their floodgates at 21 feet, which basically made it impossible for any trains to come through downtown Davenport beyond Iowa American's flood wall at this point. So we've been in daily communication with them as far as how they're maintaining their flood pumps in downtown Davenport, as well as, you know, any of their activities. So they were pumping downtown Davenport and they ceased pumping last night. So where you may have seen a dry area in front of our flood wall is now flooded as well. So we've been in constant communication with their local operations team, just so they know what we're doing and we know what they're doing.
Do you mean Iowa American?
No,
Or the
CP.
train?
CP, yeah.
The Canadian
Canadian Pacific, correct.
How's Iowa American holding up?
My understanding is that their flood wall is good until 26 feet. So at this point, their main event was to close that floodgate.
I remember when they built that wall.
Any other questions for me? Otherwise, we can have Parks and Rec talk about.
The government bridge, we're okay? I mean, I know people are concerned with bridges getting across.
Yeah, the government bridge is gonna be accessed from 2nd Street only right now. So that they're just gonna, again, have to follow detours. Yeah.
Good morning, Chad Dyson, Parks and Recreation Director, City of Davenport. As far as our department goes, our impacts are really going to be twofold, primarily the shutdown of River's Edge and impacting our program offerings and our services there, as well as Credit Island Lodge, which has been inundated for quite some time now, so we've had to cancel a number of rentals and activities out there. Secondly, the big impact will be once the water recedes and what we're looking at as far as restoration of the riverfront turf in our parks along the riverfront. And at this point, until that water recedes, we really don't know what we're looking at. Fortunately, the majority of turf was probably dormant before the waters hit, which could give us some relief in that it may be able to come back relatively quicker than expected. But until the water recedes, we really don't know what we're looking at on the riverfront. But we are looking at plans, looking at options, and putting costs together, expecting some level of restoration need on the riverfront.
What's that, you know, the bicycle bridge that goes to Credit Island at the back, on the back side?
Yes.
How does it look? I've never been there when it's flooded.
To be honest, I haven't either, so I can't tell you what it looks like right
It's
now.
it's relatively.
Yeah, I mean, we've had staff boat into the lodge
Yeah.
on several occasions to just check on it, and it is doing, the flood vents in the lodge are doing what they're supposed to do and allow the water to come through. But until the water really recedes, we don't know what our parks are gonna look like from a debris and damage standpoint.
Have you been offering replacement places? I know there's probably graduation parties or stuff that are, are you kind of trying to place people in other?
Yeah,
areas?
fortunately, we have several other options, and the River Center is one that's helped us quite a bit, but we have our lodge at Duck Creek, we have a couple other rental facilities in Roosevelt Community Center that haven't been impacted by the flood, so we're doing our best to help relocate any sort of rentals and parties that have been planned.
Any weddings?
There were several weddings, I don't believe with this current rise, but at the first round, I know we worked with the River Center to relocate. They were able to give us some space down there to help accommodate those weddings, those brides.
I'm sure they were thrilled.
Forgive me for my relative ignorance on this, but Modern Woodman Park, I tried talking yesterday with someone from the River Bandits, and they had said that Davenport, the city of Davenport, got responsible for the, I think you guys are trying to essentially redo the plan for some, basically just what kind of flooding protections are there on Modern
This
Woodman
question
Park?
might be more geared for Nicole.
I can answer that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So Modern Woodman Park, we do have a temporary flood wall that gets installed there, and it is up now and is good till 24 feet. As far as access goes, with the railroad having raised their tracks, they actually built us a walkway into Modern Woodman that was good till 21 feet. So since we're now in excess of 21 feet, that access again is going to be limited until we get back to a level. So really, we're just monitoring where that walkway begins and how you can walk in. The team and the employees there have been accessing via stairs basically over the walkway, but that may not even be accessible once we get to 22. Since this is our first time having that walkway in, we're learning as well.
And that's just semi-permanent, right? There was plans maybe in the
Correct.
fall to.
So that is semi-permanent to get us through this season. Once this season's done, that will come out, and then the entire intersection, the roadway portion of Gaines as well, will be retrofitted to be able to go over the track.
So it's possible after 22 feet, the Bandits will have to play some home games away again?
If it stays that high. At this point, their next home game isn't until May 6th. So if we can get, I guess at that point, if this holds true, we may be just fine. But
Okay.
again, we're at the mercy of the rain right now.
Yeah, they're in Ohio this week.
So. All right, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Chad, can I take your picture? I don't think we have one.